You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty across the country and in your region. Today is June 8th, 2023, and today we have a special guest. It's Walter Block. He is a professor at Loyola University, and he would love to teach our kids some free market economics over there. So if you have somebody who you want to send as a student somewhere, Walter Block's the guy to send them to. As far as for all of our guests, anybody who knows about Austrian economics too, or is into libertarian stuff, Walter Block needs no introduction. So, but anyways, today's show is going to be a special show about reparations. So it's been in the news lately. Certainly, it's a sticky topic right now. Certainly we're out of California, and so this is really big news because it seems like California might be leading the nation again, in some odd directions.
Off the cliff. Big note.
Yeah, but we're going to talk about reparations because that's a serious topic. I mean, when somebody does harm to somebody, obviously there should be some compensation. Question is where to draw the line on these things, and so let me introduce to you the scale of the problem first. So, Leon, maybe you could bring up the visual. So, in California, by the way, a state that was not a slave state when it came into the country, so already sort of not quite sharing the same guilt as potentially some of the other states, maybe. But we have decided in our wisdom, Gavin Newsom, I think, appointed a special panel, and they came back saying that a task force, yes, and they came back saying that, hey, California should be paying reparations, and I think the price tag was a little bigger than he thought it probably would be because their numbers apparently are about $800 billion is what they think the number should be. And that is about 240 something thousand per person, I believe, in total. And it's supposed to be looking at the harm that was done mainly for drug war policing is what they're calling it, and I guess some redlining issues as well in the housing market. Now that said, this 800 billion that's out of about 240 something thousand a person, I think. That number is not even completely inclusive. They actually were saying that, well, we would also recommend that there's some mortality issues where people, because of all these bad impacts from government, they're dying a little earlier. So we think every person should also get, who's black, an extra $1 million as well, but we're not going to put that in our proposal right now. But that is something that we thought. So when you add that on, it's not just 800 billion, it's actually like around $2 trillion.
Yes.
It's the actual numbers. I mean, these numbers start to get to fantasy land. But it's not just California, the state of California, not to be undone by the city of San Francisco, which is saying, hey, we think that's lowballing it. We think it should be $5 million per person, and not just $5 million per person. We also think that you should every black family in San Francisco should get a house for $1. And they should also get guaranteed annual incomes of almost $100,000 a year. And we think that we want to eliminate all your personal debt and tax burdens as well. And they want to apply that to a population that's somewhere a little under 50,000 people. So the city of San Francisco is talking around a 200 and something $billion as well. If you add those numbers up. And if you look, here's the state budget. The state budget literally is $308 billion. So it doesn't even come close to the 800 billion we're talking about in the modest state proposal for reparations. And the San Francisco budget is only about $14 billion. And they're proposing like 250 something billion in reparations. So these numbers are kind of astronomical, but it's a real topic, reparations. So what's a libertarian to do on reparations when the state has harmed people? And is there a time limit? Where does it go? Walter, what's your thoughts on the whole reparations thing?
Well, the way I see matters, there's the left wing view and the right wing view and the libertarian view, and the libertarian view is correct, and the left wing view and the right wing view, the conservative view, are wrong. So what's the left wing view? The left wing view, one of the chief spokesmen for that is a guy named Randall Robinson. And what he says pretty much is that every white, and I guess Oriental, owes every black reparations. And the problem, and the right wing view, I forget the guy's name. He's associated with Second Thoughts. I forget his name. He says that no white should owe any black any reparations. And the reason he gives, and I think he gives some good reasons, is first of all, well, not for none, but you see, the problem is that not every black person in the United States right now had forebears who were enslaved 150, 160 years ago.
You're looking at one right now. Not in the United States, right now.
You have a bit of an accent, Leon. Where are you from?
I'm from Trinidad. I'm not connected to American slavery, but I am connected to slavery outside the United States.
Right. But then there are people in Africa, black people who are now in the U.S., and they're from Africa, and they just came over 2 years ago, and they have no association with slavery. And then there's also the fact that some black people were slave owners.
Yes.
Very few.
There's about 3,000. There are 3,000 at the Civil War. There are about 3,000 blacks who own slaves.
Right.
Please,
so therefore, they're not only not owed reparations, they should owe reparations.
They should be paying. They should be
paying reparations, even though they're black. Now, those people are long dead.
Yes.
Now, what should have happened in 1865? What should have happened in 1865 is we should have had an ex post facto law declaring slavery illegal. So what's ex post facto law? Ex post facto law is saying that something that was perfectly legal beforehand, we're now going to declare it was illegal even then. Now, an interesting thing occurs with ex post facto law in the Nuremberg trials. In the Nuremberg trials, the winners were trying to put the Nazi leaders in jail or to death penalty. And the defense of the Nazis was, look, why are you bugging us? Blacks and Jews and gays and non-Aryans, they're all vermin. And the German law said you're supposed to put them to death. So, we were acting legally. And what the Nuremberg trial said is we are declaring ex post facto law that if you murder people, even though the German law says you're allowed to, and it's a virtue, we're still going to say that it's not. Well, I think we should have done the same thing with slavery. In 1865, we should have said slavery is illegal. And it was illegal. It was always illegal because it violates the libertarian law against, coercion.
Yes.
Okay, so what should have happened then? Well, the slave owner, let's say, Jason, I'll pick on you. You're a slave owner. What should have happened to you? Well, you own a plantation and you had 100 slaves, and you're now declared a criminal because you stole labor, and you did much worse than stealing labor. But you now have a plantation, and what you did in 1865, or when you died in 1890 or whenever it was, you gave it to your kids. Well, it should not have gone to your kids. All of your possessions should have gone to the ex-slaves. And not only all of your possessions, but even you. You should have been enslaved by the previous slaves. In other words, we're not saying that all slavery is illegal or improper. We're saying some of it is, namely to punish slave owners. So, Jason, you should have been a slave to the 100 slaves on your plantation, and all of the land, 1,000 acres, say, should be given to the slaves, and and obviously the house and everything else you own.
It's amazing. We're doing a libertarian show, and suddenly I've been enslaved.
That's what should have happened.
Who could have known? Who could have known, Jason?
Now, I'm going to get off slavery for a minute, and I'm going to talk about this wristwatch. Now, this wristwatch has Leon's grandfather in it. It's a picture of Leon's grandfather on the back. And what happened is my grandfather stole the watch from Leon's grandfather. And what would have happened had justice prevailed is my grandfather, the thief, never would have stolen the watch from Leon. And Leon's grandfather would have given it to his father, and his father would have given it to Leon. Instead, what happened is that my grandfather gave it to my father, and my father gave it to me. Now, should I give this watch to Leon? You're darn tootin' I should. Now, let's suppose that I never noticed Leon's grandfather's picture in there. I'm innocent. I'm the holder of stolen property. Yes, I'm the holder of stolen property, but I'm personally innocent. I should give Leon back the watch. So libertarians favor reparations, but not from all whites to all blacks. Because many whites came over after slavery. I'm Jewish. My grandparents came over in 1905 or whenever they came over, long after slavery. They had nothing to do with slavery. Leon himself, his parents came from another country, which has nothing to do with U.S. slavery.
No, my parents were never here. I came here from Trinidad.
Sorry.
So I have no connection to American slavery.
Right. So the argument from the left that all whites owe all blacks reparations is wrong. And the view from the conservatives is that no white owns any black anything is also wrong. Because Jason stole stuff from 100 people. And now there's a black guy in Harlem. And he can prove that his great-grandfather was on Jason's plantation. And there were 1,000 acres and there were 100 slaves. And what should have happened is that each slave should have been given 10 acres. That's where you get this 40 acres and a mule in my numbers that I just picked out of a hat. Each slave should have had 10 acres plus ownership, 100th ownership in Jason himself. But Jason is long gone. He died in the 19th century. But now, if this black person in Harlem can prove that, and the burden of proof is on anyone who wants to change property, possession is 9/10 of the law. Leon has to prove that this watch is his grandfather's. I don't have to prove. You don't have to prove innocent. The person who wants to change property, the burden rests with him. So if this black person in Harlem can go to court and say, my great-grandfather was on the Jason plantation, and I want 10 acres of this plantation. And right now, who's got this plantation? Jason's grandchildren. They're innocent. They got the money through inheritance, but Jason's grandchild now should give 10 acres to this guy. So the libertarian view is sort of a compromise between the extremes of left and right. The left says no reparations. The left says a lot of reparations, all reparations from all whites to all blacks. The right says no reparations at all. The libertarian view, which I think is correct, is that if you can prove that your great-grandfather was on a plantation and had his life stolen from him or his freedom stolen from him, and now the plantation or anything of value that still exists is in the hands of the white grandchild, well, the white grandchild should give that stuff to the black grandchild. So you wouldn't have this case of everybody in San Francisco or in California owing everything and greater than the budget, but you would have cases where a fair court would determine whether or not this black case is true. And if it is true, he should be given 1/100th of the plantation, and that would be the libertarian case.
Walter, while I could understand the logic of your argument, I see some real problems here. Okay, this thing about intergenerational harm and intergenerational guilt to me is seriously problematic, because, for instance, where would you draw the line? If I do something now, say whatever, I stole something, whatever I did, should my son at some point in time, my grandson, I have a grandson, should he have to pay for any of this? Okay, slavery was horrendous. I think we can all agree on that. The Jim Crow was not as bad, but horrendous in its own way also. But we are getting to the point, based upon your argument, of we are going to make criminals out of people. First of all, well, partly upon their skin color, but your argument does not really deal with skin color. You just deal with a slave owner, the descendants of the slave owner. So criminals are going to be made out of the descendants of the slave owner, and worse yet, victims are going to be made. Okay, I wasn't born here. Okay, I wasn't born here. I don't have any connection to American slavery. But if I did, here I am. I mean, I'm living comfortably. I retired comfortably and all that here in the United States. But if I was born here, if I could have proved slavery in my background here in America, all of a sudden, here I am, and I'm going to become a victim of a white man who's long dead. I see some real problems with that.
Well, Leon, you guys leave my grandkids' plantation alone. I just want to be left out of this.
You see what I mean? Jason? I am going to come. According to Walter's argument, I should be able to come and sue Becky and get some stuff from Becky, right?
Well, we disagree on several grounds. What Leon is really asking is about statutes of limitations. Right. Are there any statutes of limitations? Slavery was 160, 70 years ago. Shouldn't we call an end to it? Well, in my view, libertarians do not believe in any legislated statute of limitations. One of my books is on Israel, and I make the case that the Jews were there first 2,000 years ago. So I don't believe in any statute of limitations that is legislatively drawn, but I do believe in a natural statute of limitations, namely, the longer ago it occurred, the harder it is to prove anything, and the burden of proof is on the person who wants to be the grieved.
Making the claim. The person who's making the claim, yes. Okay.
So the person making the claim, it's very hard because 1,000 years ago, there was no written language. It's very difficult to prove anything. So there is a natural statute of limitations. And the natural statute of limitations is that it's harder to prove stuff the further back you go. But should we say, well, 20 years is the statute? And that's ridiculous. If a crime took place 21 years ago and there's a statute of limitations of 20 years, then there's no justice? No, that's ridiculous. But so if you can prove that the crime took place 21 years ago, you should be able to prevail in court. So that's one area where Leon and I disagree. The second area where we disagree is he thinks that Jason's grandchildren are criminals, or that I'm a criminal because I have his grandfather's watch. No, we're not criminals. Jason's grandchildren are not criminals. They are the unjust holders of stolen property. That's all they are. They're innocent until and when the property is taken from them, they're not considered criminals. They're just considered debtors. They owe that black person in Harlem or New Orleans or wherever the black person is, if he can prove that his grandfather was on Jason's plantation, Jason's grandchildren improperly got got the property, just like I improperly got the wristwatch. I'm not a criminal. I'm going to give the watch back to Leon if he can prove that his grandfather really owned that watch. And Jason's grandchildren are not criminals. So, Leon, when you say that they're criminals, that's not my view. My view is they are innocent people, but they are holding stolen property. Property that they never should have gotten in the first place, because that property should have gone to the black grandfather. So, Jason, I think that we disagree on the statute of limitations, and we disagree on the characterization of these white people who owe money as criminals. They're not criminals. They're innocent, but they owe stuff. Look, if I find a bicycle on the street and I put it in my garage because I don't know who owns it, and then somebody comes along and he's got a picture of himself riding the bicycle and he says, hey, can you please give me back my bicycle? I should give him back his bicycle because it's his bicycle, but I'm not a criminal.
Yeah.
But we're still dealing with this thing of intergenerational. Well, The only reason Jason's grandson or granddaughter will owe, if I was American by birth, will owe my grandson anything is because supposedly a criminal act was committed against my great grandfather, and Jason's granddaughter will now have to pay for the fact that his great grandfather committed a crime against my great grandfather. So I cannot see how you can say that we are not criminalizing people who never had anything to do with the original crime. I mean, slavery was horrendous. I think we don't have a disagreement on that. But slavery was horrendous. But I don't think we could just choose people and punish them for something that somebody 5-10 generations ago did.
You use the word pay. I never used the word pay. I didn't say pay. I didn't say that I would pay you anything. I said I would give you this watch. I didn't say that Jason's granddaughter or grandson would pay anything. I said that he would have to give up 10 acres of the land because he shouldn't have inherited it in the first place. So that's different from paying. You put words in my mouth. I never used the P word, pay. I only said if there was real estate or something tangible that Jason's grandchild has, he has to give it up. But he's not a criminal, and he doesn't have to take 1 penny out of his bank account. Suppose that the only thing that they own was the plantation house, and the plantation house was destroyed, and Jason's grandchild never got it. Jason's grandchild doesn't owe a penny.
Well, and this is one of the points I wanted to bring out that I seem to be hearing, and that's it. Walter's view appears to be very much an individualized justice, whereas the people who are pushing forward a lot of the reparations ideas now are looking for a more collectivized justice, I guess, which usually winds up in being a little bit of the injustice that I think Leon is pointing to. But let me bring up another example, because this kind of bridges the gaps. And Leon, maybe you could bring this one up. Back in, I can't remember the exact year, it's 1988, Reagan had signed a bill that gave reparations to the Japanese. And so the Japanese Americans, they weren't exactly enslaved, but they were unjustly imprisoned. A lot of these people were citizens of the United States, and they literally just had their rights taken away, almost in COVID fashion, because of the fear that some people had. And they were rounded up and they were put into camps. Their property was liquidated a lot of times, and or destroyed by people who, just had irrational hate for some of them. And they were given $20,000 at the time and an official apology, which, you adjust that for inflation, maybe it's 40-something thousand now, maybe, but far cry from the amounts we're talking about currently. But also, too, these people, there was a direct tie to the harm, because you had to be somebody who could make a tie to the fact that you were imprisoned in these camps, versus just saying that I'm the same skin color as somebody who was harmed in the past. So what do you guys think about that? And
just to be clear on that particular case, okay, it only allowed the compensations only went to a grandchild, no further than a grandchild of the person who was interned. Okay, so that was a direct linkage to the harm and the property that was lost as a result of the internment of Japanese Americans. So this is far different from this situation that we're talking about here. Walter, I'm sure you have a lot to say.
It's only 40 years from World War II to 1988, so many of the people would still be alive. Some of them might have passed away. I mean, if you were 70 years old, 40 years later, it would be exceeding your life expectancy. My view would be that this was wrong, because where did they get the money from? They got the money from taxes. And who paid the taxes? A lot of innocent people paid the taxes.
Including some other Japanese people, potentially, and other Japanese Americans.
That's true. What they should have done is examined exactly who was guilty of this. Which senators voted for that? Which congressmen voted for that? Which policemen actually put them in these camps and get their money, make them pay, because they were criminals. The people responsible, this is just kidnapping. When you put innocent people in jail, you're like a kidnapper. They should be considered criminals. They should be put in jail for doing this. Now, it's true, it was 40 years later. Many of them would be dead, but some of them would be alive. And
yeah, they were a lot alive, yes. At least their children and grandchildren were alive.
Well, the grandchildren were alive, but the people alive in 1944 or 1940, or whenever they put them in the concentration camps.
All the people who voted for FDR.
You can't do that because voting is a secret ballot, and we'll never know who did it.
Yeah.
But if we knew, that would be a different issue. But certainly we know the people who were guilty of doing it, the people who ran those camps. The policemen who kept them in those camps, the legislators who passed the law that did this, their personal fortunes should be attacked. And if they're still alive, they should be put in jail for kidnapping. So,
Walter, I could almost agree with your analysis. Almost, I'm not saying completely. I could almost agree with your analysis if we could apply the same standards to in the case of reparations for Black Americans, because when you really look at it, okay, slavery was an institution mostly of the Democratic Party. So was Jim Crow. So was the destruction of Reconstruction. So all of the harms that we see in Black Americans today, and if you want to link it to slavery and they wanted to link it to Jim Crow and all these other things, they were all a function of the Democratic Party and their policies. So if we want to go to this intergenerational thing, I think then the first people that we really should be looking to sue and to get any sort of compensation from, if we start with the Democratic Party as an institution, maybe I could agree with you.
Leon, let me give Walter the last word because we're running up on time.
I'm sorry.
Well, let's get back to Jason's very good point about individuals versus collectives. Yes. I would go along with Leo, but not for the Democratic Party, which is a collective. But if there were individual Democrats, and some Republicans were guilty too, sure, we agree.
Okay. And in the end, I guess it's that collectivism kills, collectivism enslaves. There you go. Giving us a new motto for the show. But thanks again, Walter, for joining us on this one. Certainly it's a timely topic. And thank you out there for watching. And like you said, in the last show, we did a specific show on Walter where we got into his background and how he came around to Liberty. So you can check that one out as well. Thanks again for joining. And until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.